Hey there, it's Lauren from Rustic Honey, and today we are back on a gloomy day here at the farmhouse. It's very foggy outside, and so it's a good day to be inside, bake a little bread, and talk to you more about some daily homemaking habits. Come along with us. I don't know about you guys, but I have come to this realization that I love the month of January. It seems like things just slow down just enough to where we can spend a little bit more time at home. As long as most of our needs are met, I feel like I don't mind being snowed in. I don't mind the rainy days because it gives me a chance to focus on the things at home that I'd really like to focus on and not feel like I need to be somewhere else. And of course, in the month of January, a lot of us are thinking about our New Year's goals, and it comes down to our daily habits on a lot of things. So, I wanted to share with you today, again, more of the habits that I'm doing in 2024. And so, I'm going to give you a list of 10 as we go throughout our day here. The first one's not really necessarily a daily habit, it's more of a weekly habit. But I'm trying to get better at making our own sandwich bread this year. Last year, I really dove into sourdough and I wanted to learn more about it. And so I committed to working on my sourdough every single week. And not only did I learn how to make bread a lot better, but I learned a lot of different recipes to use with my sourdough. So I did a lot of research and worked on that every week. And I thought if this year I really focus on sandwich bread in particular, whether it's sourdough or yeast bread, as long as I'm working on perfecting the sandwich bread to the point where my family loves it and we don't have to buy store-bought bread anymore, then I'm winning at this goal. So again, this comes down to kind of every week probably for us, but I'm still working on the recipe. I can go ahead and put it down in the description box because I know some of you will be asking, but I'll go ahead and share the ingredients, but I can't say that I've maybe like perfected it this time. Although this batch was really good, I did decide to buy the bread flour this time, which is different than what I'd done in the past. And I do feel like it helped it along a little bit better. Thought it was really yummy. So, as you saw with my little helper here, we had a little tug of war with the yeast, but we put aside 2 cups of warm water with about 4 teaspoons of yeast and then a fourth of a cup of honey. We are very lucky and we have an awesome local honey source. So, I love putting that in my recipes. And we just let that set for 10 minutes. And during that 10 minutes, I decided it's time to do the dishes. We're going to call this daily habit dishes on demand. In the past, I feel like I've had this habit of doing the dishes every day, but I generally wait until dinner time. I clean as I go, and then I make sure I have a clean sink before I go to bed. But I don't know if it's our growing family or what. It just seems like we always have dishes in the sink throughout the day, and it's adding to my mental clutter. So I thought this year I would really like to keep our home looking tidier more often. So I thought dishes on demand it is. I will do the dishes every morning. Generally, the dishwasher is clean in the morning. I will unload it during breakfast, and then it's not the bottleneck for the rest of the day that way. As I'm cooking anything or having lunch, I can put away the dirty dishes into the dishwasher that's now empty, and we're ready to go. So dishes on demand is daily habit number 2. Now back to our yeast about 10 minutes later. As you can see, it is super frothy and ready to go. I don't know if you call it frothy, but it's lifted. You can tell it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. And I love that in the baking world. I like when you can see what it's supposed to be doing. I go ahead and get out my weight scale when I do flour because as you can see, not only am I not the greatest scooper, but I've got little hands helping me and it's really hard to keep track. But this recipe is 5 to 6 cups of flour. We used more like 6 flours, and I'll put the grams and everything down below too, because if you're like me, the grams are helpful. As you can see, Reese here is going to get it nice and mixed up for us. This is like the opposite of sifted flour, but it's okay because we're making memories, and if this recipe turns out in real life, then we know we're doing something right. We can't have something that's so difficult that it's not going to come together very often. That's just not the phase of life that I'm in. So if this bread turns out like we need it to with all the extra hands in the kitchen, then that's a recipe that's a keeper. Okay, so into the mixer goes the flour and the salt. The yeast mixture is going to be added into that, and then the butter is the last thing to add in. We're going to let this knead and let the mixer do its work for about 10 minutes. And again, there's more dishes, but dishes on demand is what we're doing. So it's funny though, whenever there's only 3 things in the sink, it doesn't seem like that much. It's easy to walk away, but it's like a little fire that starts. And then before you know it, you have an entire sink full of dishes. So if you just put out the fire when it's tiny, it takes literally less than a minute to put them in the dishwasher or take care of them right away. So I'm really trying to do that this year with lots of things, but especially the dishes in our house. With our growing family, there's a lot to wash around here. Now, this came together, but I felt like it was still just a little bit doughy for me, a little bit wet. So I added a little bit more flour, took it off the dough hook, and it wasn't quite pulling away from the sides as much as I wanted it to. Sometimes I feel like my KitchenAid mixer doesn't necessarily knead it as well as it could. So even when it's been on there 10 minutes, I go ahead and knead it by hand just a little bit to get it to come together and form the ball that I want it to. And then I just plop it back down into the same bowl from the KitchenAid mixer. We're going to cover it with a towel, and then we are going to let it rest for about an hour. I am going to move this into our dining room because during the winter months, our dining room stays a little bit warmer than my kitchen because it's in the oldest part of the house on the north end, kind of. So the dining room's a little bit warmer. I feel like things rise a little bit better here. One tip I have, though, I've figured out with sourdough, if you have an overnight rising going on, put it above your dishwasher and run the dishwasher overnight, and it will rise so well because of that warmth coming up. I know I've also heard you can put it on top of your refrigerator, but I feel like my refrigerator doesn't put off nearly as much heat as my dishwasher. So that is something, if you're doing an overnight rise, to definitely try. Now we're just getting situated with a little bit of playtime, and I've got to move on to my next daily habit. Now, I know this one's going to seem really boring, and everyone tells you to make your bed, but is it not so true? I'm going to add something to this, but making the bed is so important. And on this particular day, I'm making the bed later than I would like. I, of course, would like to roll out of bed, and as soon as I get out of bed, make the bed. But sometimes at this stage of life, there happens to be a little one in my bed also that's sleeping in, or some reason we're scrambling out the door for school in the morning. So it doesn't always happen and it's easy to leave it. But if I go back in and tidy it up, I so appreciate it at night when I come back. I will say, in addition to making the bed, it's also important to tidy the room, take out the things off the nightstand that don't belong in there, and get your books ready, because my next tip is to read 10 pages every day. And I find that the biggest factor in getting myself to read the 10 pages is to making sure I have it ready at my nightstand every night. And I know that that is where it's like the cue. That is when I read. This is where I read. And once I open that book, I'm reading 10 pages. I started that habit a couple years ago, and I do fall off the wagon sometimes on this, but when I am reading 10 pages every night, it feels so good. You get through so many books that you want to read. I love that. The next tip is to drink your water. Again, this is another one that we all know, and for the most part, I have all of these habits already on the daily, but January is a great time to just reevaluate your habits. Where are you falling short? How could you make the system better? Maybe come up with a better cue or a better reward, like lighting my candle when my kitchen's clean. That is the greatest reward. I don't know if any of you do that, but that is something that motivates me to wipe the counters down, finish the dishes, because then I get to light my yummy candle. And our sixth daily habit is one load of laundry. Again, laundry is a daily habit I've had for a while, but this year I'm really trying to focus on just one load every single day except for Sunday. I usually don't do Sunday, and I'll do 2 loads on Monday because that's kind of our home day. I think in the past it has sometimes felt like I was doing 1 load a day, when in reality I might skip a couple days and then do 3 loads on another day. So it always felt like a ton of laundry, whereas 1 load feels really manageable, and it's something I can fold and put away all in one day, and we're never behind on clothing. So far so good on this habit in the new year. My next habit as I'm tidying up the living room is to tell you about daily devotional time and Bible time. Now, this one is a good one for the soul. I think if you take the time to really focus on this one in the new year, you will feel like a different person at the end of the year. So I really recommend these Daily Grace Co. Workbooks, I guess you could call them. They're kind of devotionals, and they review a scripture every day, and then they have like a weekly recap. This is not sponsored in any way, but I find myself telling everyone about them because they are gorgeous books. They're really not very expensive either, and they often have great sales, so be sure to check them out. I'll leave a link in the description box below. I'm just going to check on my bread here, and it has risen quite a bit, but I think it can get a little bit higher, so I'm going to give it 10 minutes. And that brings me to my next daily habit, which is a 10-minute sprint or 10-minute tidy time. When I find myself with an extra 10 minutes, instead of scrolling social media, I'm trying to be very intentional about what I use that time for. And today on my list, I really want to get through my kids' clothes. I recently cleaned out their closet, and I need to file these away for the next season. So that is on my list. And it looks like after that 10 minutes of just quick sorting, our bread is ready to be formed into our loaves. So let's get busy doing that real quick. We are first going to punch down our loaf, which is equally satisfying, but also like, aw, because it was so big and fluffy and then we just broke it. But anyway, it's part of the process. I'm still learning. We are going to split this into 2 loaves today. So I just kind of rolled it onto my counter that's lightly floured, and I'm going to use my bench scraper here to cut it in half. You could weigh this on your scale if you want to make perfectly even loaves. I kind of just did the old like lift-a-roo to see if they're about the same, and they worked for me. So they actually turned out both pretty similar in size. So I just kind of pull them apart, lay them out flat, and then roll them up nicely, adding a little bit of tension to the ends here. And then I'm going to butter my loaf pans and get these back in there for another rise for another hour. So something I like to do with myself is kind of play beat the clock. So I had 14 minutes left on the load of laundry, and I thought back up to the kids' clothes because it will take me more than 10 minutes today to get through some of these. So I'm just labeling as I go so that when I walk away, I'm right where I left off when I come back. Now, this is a while later after I had been at work. So about an hour after this and doing the kids' clothes, the loaves are ready for the oven. So I'm going to take these back to the kitchen. We're going to brush them with a little bit of butter because why not? When in doubt in the kitchen, you just always add more butter. I mean, I think everyone knows that, right? I'm just really though, you do want to brush these with butter if you want them to turn out nice and browned on the exterior. And I just feel like they turn out very pretty whenever I brush them with butter. All right, we are on the home stretch with this bread. It is now going to go in a 350-degree oven for about 40 minutes, just both loaves at the same time. And we will get to work on a few other things while these are baking. But with the magic of video, I'm going to show you how they look right away as they come out of the oven. And we're going to top it with just a little bit more butter. And I have found that the hardest thing about bread baking is to let it rest after it comes out of the oven, because all I want to do is dive right into it and eat the fresh bread. But it's best to just let it sit there for a while and let it cool down. So that's what I'm going to do before we move on to cutting it open and having ourselves a little snack. Now again, with only having 1 load of laundry, it's a lot easier to fold and put away. It's a lot more manageable. It's also more manageable when I am working throughout the day. So if I have to run out of the house, I have it in the dryer. It can sit there. I know it's not the best for wrinkles, but most of our clothes are pretty forgiving, so I just leave it on my bed and I will fold it right before bed tonight. Now, I know we've said that before, and sometimes it ends up on our bedroom floor, which is a huge no-no. We don't want to do that either. But lately, I've really been enjoying folding laundry while also listening to a podcast or YouTube video. So pairing the habit that you're kind of dreading with something you really enjoy helps to knock it out as well. The bread turned out so good, so nice and fluffy, perfect sandwich bread. I'm still working on my recipe. I want to try it a few more times before I make it official on my blog, but as always, I will leave today's recipe in the description box. So that leads me to daily tip number 9, which is our outdoor walk. I find it so important to get outside every single day, even if just for a little bit when it's super cold. And sometimes chore time has to become outdoor walking time just to fit it all in, and that's fine too. But in the book I'm reading right now, or getting ready to finish actually, it's The Comfort Crisis, it talks about different studies about outdoor walking. And one thing I wanted to share with you was a study that they had done where a 20-minute stroll, even just through a city park, can cause profound changes in our neurological structure of our brains. This leaves us feeling calmer, with sharper, more productive, and creative minds. It also talks about being in the wild. And this feels like I'm in the wild with this wild puppy that we have jumping all over me today. One last thing to add from the book is that it said they also found that people who used their cell phones on their walk saw none of those benefits. So it's so important to unplug, get outside, and just have gratitude for what's around you. Grab the mail. I know I'm grateful for all of this rain that we've been getting after such a drought last summer. I love to see the ditches full, even though it is super muddy, even just getting the mail. I know how dry it was, and I'm just very grateful for it now. My final daily homemaking habit is going to be to sort the mail the minute that it comes in the door to avoid the paper clutter. And I'm working on a new system this year with my basket. So I'm bringing it out every time the mail comes in. I'm putting any bills or action items in a complete it folder. And then I'm putting anything else that we need to do or discuss, me and my husband, on the clipboard. So every week we're having a meeting to go over these things and hopefully stay on top of all of the things. And that might sound really official, but there are a lot of moving parts around here these days. So it's good to stay on top of it and create the systems around it. If you'd like to hear more about systems that we have in our home or any of that, I get really geeky about those things too. So let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see a video on that. But I just want to thank you for stopping by on this rainy day and chatting through our daily habits. I hope you leave here inspired to tackle some of your own daily habits throughout your home. Let me know in the comments below what you're working on this year. I would love to know. And we'll see you back here again soon.